Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. Picture this. You come home after a long day designing logos for clients who change their minds every 5 minutes, and your girlfriend is cooking dinner. The apartment smells like garlic and herbs, and she's standing at the stove in that blue sundress that makes her look like summer itself. You walk up behind her, wrap your arms around her waist, and kiss her neck softly, the same way you have every evening for 2 years. She's laughing at something on her phone, completely absorbed in whatever her coworker posted on Instagram. You turn her around gently, pull her close, and lean in for a proper kiss, the kind that says, "I missed you today," without words. That's when she rolls her eyes so hard they practically disappear into the back of her skull and says, loud enough that her sister Megan can hear from the living room where she's pretending to watch Netflix. Kissing you feels pathetic. Like you're some desperate teenager who's never been with a woman before. God, it's so needy. Then she physically pushes you back with both hands and says, "Move. I'm trying to cook and you're being clingy again." The kitchen goes silent except for the sizzling pan and the distant sound of some reality TV show. Her sister shifts uncomfortably on the couch, suddenly very interested in her phone screen. And me? I stood there in my work clothes, holding my laptop bag, realizing that every kiss, every hug, every moment of physical affection I'd initiated for 2 years had been pathetic. Every morning goodbye kiss, every evening hello hug, every time I'd reach for her hand during movies, every casual touch while passing in the hallway. All of it had apparently been the desperate clinging of someone who didn't know how to be in a relationship. But here's what happened next, and this is where everything changed. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain myself. I didn't try to defend 2 years of what I thought was expressing love through touch. I didn't ask what I'd done wrong or promise to give her more space. I just stepped back, looked at her for a long moment while she stirred the pasta sauce with aggressive motions, and said, "You're absolutely right." The confusion on her face was immediate and beautiful. Her eyebrows scrunched together, and she actually stopped stirring. She expected me to get hurt, to argue, to beg for forgiveness, to ask what she meant or promised to be less needy. The old me would have apologized profusely and spent the evening analyzing what I'd done wrong. Instead, I walked to the living room, nodded politely to her sister, sat down in my usual chair, and started reading a book I'd been putting off for months. "Jake?" Sarah called from the kitchen after about 10 minutes of silence. "Dinner's ready." "Thanks," I replied without looking up. "I'll be there in a minute." When I finally joined them at the table, I sat down, thanked her for cooking, and ate in relative silence while she and Megan chatted about work drama and weekend plans. Normally, I would have been part of the conversation, asking Sarah about her day, touching her hand across the table, maybe playing with her fingers while she talked. That night, I just ate and listened politely, like a dinner guest who was being polite but not particularly engaged. "You're quiet tonight," Megan observed, probably trying to figure out if she'd witnessed some kind of relationship fight. "Just tired," I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. I was tired. Tired of being pathetic, apparently. That night, when we went to bed, I didn't reach for her. For 2 years, I'd been the one to pull her close, to kiss her goodnight, to wrap my arms around her while we slept. Our bedtime routine had always been the same. I'd pull her against my chest, kiss the top of her head, maybe whisper something about loving her or hoping she slept well. That night, I brushed my teeth, put on my pajamas, said good night, and lay on my side of the bed facing away from her. I could feel her waiting in the darkness. She shifted around for what felt like 20 minutes, probably expecting our usual routine. When it didn't come, when I didn't reach across the mattress to pull her close, when I didn't kiss her shoulder or play with her hair until she fell asleep, she finally whispered, "Are you mad at me?" "No," I said simply. "Then why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird. I'm being exactly what you asked for. Not pathetic." She was quiet after that, but I could tell from her breathing that she didn't fall asleep for a long time. The next morning was when she really started to notice the change. I got up, showered, and got dressed for work like always. But I didn't kiss her goodbye. I didn't wrap my arms around her waist while she made coffee. I didn't tell her she looked beautiful in her pajamas. I didn't ask what her plans were for the day or tell her I'd miss her. I just grabbed my keys, said "see you tonight," and headed for the door. I could see her watching me from the kitchen window as I got in my car, probably trying to figure out if I was still upset about the night before. She was still standing there when I backed out of the driveway, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips, wearing this confused expression like she couldn't quite figure out what was different, but knew something was. At work, my coworker Tom noticed the change immediately. "You seem different today," he said during our lunch break. "More focused or something?" "Just working on being less pathetic," I replied, which probably confused him, but I wasn't in the mood to explain. The truth was, I wasn't upset. I was awake. For the first time in our relationship, I saw things clearly. I'd been the only one initiating physical contact. Every kiss, every hug, every casual touch had come from me. She'd been a passive recipient of affection, accepting what I gave, but never giving it back. And apparently, even my giving had become an annoyance rather than a gift. When I came home that evening, she was waiting for me with this expectant look on her face, like she was braced for a conversation about the night before. I kissed her on the cheek, a polite, brief peck that you might give your aunt, and asked how her day was while I put my things down. "It was fine," she said, clearly confused by the casual nature of my greeting. "How was yours?" "Good. I finished the Morrison project." "That's great," she said, but I could tell she was waiting for more. Waiting for me to ask follow-up questions about her day, to show interest in the details, to pull her close and give her the kind of welcome home attention she was used to. When it didn't come, when I just started looking through the mail like any other roommate might do, she tried a different approach. "I was thinking we could order Thai food tonight and watch that new series everyone's talking about." "Sounds good," I said, still sorting through bills and junk mail. "The one with the murder mystery plot that's supposed to be really good." "Okay." She was fishing for engagement, for the enthusiastic response she was used to getting when she suggested spending time together. The old me would have been excited about a cozy night in, would have probably suggested we order extra spring rolls because I knew she loved them, would have already been thinking about how we'd curl up together on the couch. "Should I order the usual?" she asked. "Whatever you want." That first week was like watching a science experiment unfold. She seemed relieved initially, probably thinking I'd gotten the message about being less clingy and would eventually settle into a middle ground. No more surprise hugs from behind while she was working at her laptop. No more hands reaching for hers during movies. No more arms wrapping around her while she brushed her teeth in the morning. She got exactly what she'd asked for, a boyfriend who wasn't desperately needy for physical contact. But here's what she didn't anticipate. When I stopped being physically affectionate, I didn't just stop with the kisses and hugs. I stopped with everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No more good morning touches when I passed her in the kitchen. No more casual hand on her back when we were walking. No more playing with her hair while she talked. No more absent-minded caressing of her arm while we watched TV. "Why are you sitting over there?" she asked on our third movie night, patting the couch cushion next to her where I usually sat. I looked up from the armchair I'd chosen instead, the one that clearly seated only one person. "I thought you'd be more comfortable with space." "I didn't mean you had to sit in a different chair." "What did you mean?" The question hung in the air because she couldn't answer it. She hadn't thought it through. She'd wanted to stop feeling suffocated by my affection, but she hadn't considered what life would look like without any physical affection at all. "I just meant, maybe not so much touching during movies. Like, we don't have to be attached at the hip." "We're not attached at the hip," I pointed out reasonably. "We're not even attached at all." She didn't like that answer. I could see her brain working, trying to figure out how to get back to the dynamic where I was constantly reaching for her, constantly making her feel desired, constantly being the one to bridge any physical distance between us. By the second week, the testing began. She'd reach for my hand while we were walking to the grocery store, and I'd let her take it. But I wouldn't squeeze back. I wouldn't intertwine our fingers the way I used to. I wouldn't be the one to initiate the contact or try to maintain it. If she wanted to hold hands, she could hold hands. But she'd have to do all the work of making it feel connected. "You're being weird," she said after one particularly awkward hand-holding session where I'd remained completely passive, letting my hand be held rather than actively holding hers. "How so?" "You're just different, distant." "I'm being exactly what you asked for. Not pathetic, not desperate, not clingy. But you're like a robot now." Robots are efficient. They don't waste energy on unnecessary gestures. She didn't like that answer either. But I was done caring what she liked. For 2 years, I'd cared intensely about her preferences, her comfort, her happiness. And she'd called that caring pathetic. The real wake-up call came during week 3. We were watching some mindless comedy, and she did something she'd never done before in our entire relationship. She got up from her spot on the couch, walked over to my chair, and tried to curl up with me. It was immediately awkward. The chair wasn't designed for 2 people. She couldn't find a comfortable position. Her elbow was digging into my ribs, and her legs were hanging off the side. "This is uncomfortable," she said after a few minutes of shifting around, trying to find a position that worked. "The chair wasn't designed for 2 people," I replied matter-of-factly, not moving to accommodate her or suggest an alternative. "Well, why don't you come sit on the couch with me? I'm comfortable here, but I want to cuddle." "Then you should have thought about that before you chose to sit on the couch alone." She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. This wasn't the boyfriend she knew. This wasn't the man who would have immediately moved to make her comfortable, who would have pulled her onto his lap or followed her to the couch without being asked. She went back to the couch, frustrated and confused. In the old days, I would have followed her, would have pulled her against me, would have made sure she felt close and connected. Now, she was learning what it felt like to want physical closeness and not have it automatically provided. Her sister visited again the following weekend, and I watched Sarah try to show off our relationship like she always did. Except now, there was nothing to show off. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. I didn't play with her hair while she told stories. I didn't kiss her cheek when she said something funny. I didn't rest my hand on her leg during conversations. Her sister noticed. "You two seem different," Megan said carefully while Sarah was in the bathroom. "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious about an outside perspective. "I don't know. Less touchy, I guess. Last time I was here, you guys were all over each other." Things change. When Sarah came back, Megan tried to bring it up diplomatically. "You guys seem more independent now." "Jake's just been in a weird mood lately," Sarah replied quickly, shooting me a look that was part warning, part plea. "What kind of weird mood?" Megan asked. Sarah couldn't really explain it without admitting what she'd said that started all this. "He's just been distant. Less affectionate." "That's not necessarily a bad thing," Megan said thoughtfully. "Some couples are too codependent." I almost smiled at that. Sarah had created this situation by complaining about my affection, and now she couldn't complain about the lack of it without looking inconsistent. After Megan left, Sarah finally confronted me directly. "What's your problem? You're making us look bad in front of my family." "How am I making us look bad? You barely touched me all weekend. We look like strangers sharing an apartment." "I thought touching you was pathetic. I was having a bad day when I said that. I didn't mean it." Bad days don't create new opinions. They just make us honest about the ones we already have. She had no comeback for that, because we both knew it was true. The comment hadn't come from nowhere. It had come from 2 years of receiving my affection without appreciating it, without reciprocating it, and eventually without wanting it. "Fine," she said, her voice getting sharper. "Maybe sometimes your touching felt like too much. But that doesn't mean I wanted you to stop completely. You didn't specify what parts of being pathetic I should keep and which parts one should drop. So I made an executive decision and dropped it all. That's not fair." What's not fair is spending 2 years trying to show someone love through physical affection and having them call it pathetic in front of witnesses. That shut her up. For the first time, she was forced to confront what she'd actually said and how it had actually sounded. A month into my new approach, she was getting desperate. She started trying to recreate moments that used to happen naturally. She'd stand close to me while I was doing dishes, clearly hoping I'd put my arms around her from behind like I used to. When I didn't, she'd make comments like, "The kitchen feels lonely," or, "I miss when you used to help me cook." "I still help you cook," I'd reply, continuing to dry dishes without looking at her. "I just don't distract you with pathetic physical affection anymore." The word pathetic hit different now. Every time I used it to describe my old behavior, her words, not mine, I could see her flinch. She was starting to realize that maybe my physical affection hadn't been pathetic. Maybe it had been love. And maybe she missed it. She tried different approaches. She'd walk around in just a towel after showering, something that used to drive me crazy with desire. I'd glance up, say "nice towel," and go back to reading. She'd stretch in front of me while doing yoga, clearly hoping for some kind of physical response. I'd ask if she needed more space and offer to move to another room. "Don't you think I look good?" She asked one evening after spending an hour getting ready for a dinner we were supposed to attend with her coworkers. "You always look good," I replied honestly. "But don't you want to touch me? I'm not pathetic anymore, remember? I don't desperately need to put my hands on you just because you look attractive." Her face fell. This wasn't the reaction she was used to. For 2 years, getting dressed up had guaranteed her compliments, appreciative touches, maybe even making us late because I couldn't keep my hands off her. Now she was learning what it felt like to look good for someone who appreciated it intellectually but didn't feel compelled to act on that appreciation. The breaking point came 6 weeks after that night in the kitchen. She'd planned what was obviously meant to be a romantic evening. I came home to find candles lit throughout the apartment, wine breathing on the counter, and dinner that clearly required more effort than her usual cooking. She was wearing the red dress I used to tell her made her look stunning, and she'd done her hair the way she knew I loved. She was trying to recreate the conditions under which I used to shower her with physical attention. But she'd forgotten one crucial element. I used to touch her constantly not because of how she looked, but because I couldn't help myself. The dress and the candles had been bonuses, not requirements. I appreciated the dinner. I thanked her for the effort. I complimented the food and the wine selection. But I didn't reach across the table to take her hand. I didn't tell her how beautiful she looked. I didn't suggest we skip dessert and go straight to the bedroom. When we moved to the living room afterward, I sat in my usual chair instead of joining her on the couch. "Are you going to touch me at all tonight?" she finally asked, her voice smaller than usual. "Do you want me to?" "Yes." "Okay." I reached over and briefly patted her shoulder. "There. That's not what I meant." "What did you mean?" "I meant, like you used to. Like you actually want me." That's when I knew we needed to have the conversation that would define everything going forward. "But I used to want you in pathetic ways, remember? Like a desperate teenager who's never been with a woman before." She was crying now, which in the old days would have immediately triggered my protective instincts. I would have been across the room in seconds, pulling her close, asking what was wrong, trying to fix whatever had upset her. Now it just felt like another manipulation tactic, conscious or not. "I didn't mean you should stop everything," she said through tears. "You didn't specify what parts of being pathetic I should keep and which parts one should drop. So I made an executive decision and dropped it all." "I miss how you used to touch me," she admitted. "When's the last time you touched me first?" I asked. The silence that followed was devastating. She stopped crying and just stared at me, her brain clearly working through 2 years of memories, trying to find an example. The pause stretched on long enough to become its own answer. "I show affection differently," she finally said, but her voice lacked any conviction. "How?" Another silence. Because we both knew the answer. She showed affection by accepting mine. That was it. Her contribution to our physical relationship had been allowing me to touch her, kiss her, hold her. But she'd never given those things freely. She'd never been the one to cross the room just to kiss me. She'd never been the one to reach for my hand during a movie. She'd never been the one to pull me close in bed. "I don't know how to be the one who starts things," she confessed. "I know," I said. "And that's the problem. For 2 years, I was the only one who wanted us enough to do anything about it. You just existed in the space I created around you. That's not fair, isn't it? Name one time you kissed me first. One time you hugged me without me hugging you first. One time you reached for me because you couldn't help yourself." She couldn't, because those moments didn't exist. In 2 years of dating, she had never once been the pursuer. She had never once been the one who initiated physical intimacy. She had never once made me feel desired rather than tolerated. "So what now?" she asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "You're just going to stay like this forever? Cold and untouchable?" "I'm not cold. I'm just not pathetic anymore. If you want physical affection, you'll have to earn it the same way I tried to earn your respect for 2 years. Except I actually succeeded in earning your respect by stopping, while you never succeeded in earning mine by participating. I don't know how. Figure it out. I spent 2 years learning how to love someone who didn't want to be loved the way I needed to love them. Now it's your turn to learn how to love someone you actually have to pursue." That conversation happened on a Tuesday evening in November. By Friday, she was making her first awkward attempts at initiation. She tried to take my hand during a movie, and when I didn't resist, but didn't respond enthusiastically either, she squeezed tighter, trying to get the reaction she was used to getting from me. "This feels weird," she said. "Learning new skills usually does." It shouldn't be this hard to touch my own boyfriend. It wasn't hard for me to touch my girlfriend. But apparently, it was pathetic. She tried kissing me first that weekend. It was incredibly awkward because she'd never had to be the one to lean in, to close the distance, to risk rejection. She'd never had to read someone's body language to see if they were receptive. She'd never had to be vulnerable in that particular way. When I kissed her back, but didn't deepen it, didn't pull her closer, didn't turn it into the passionate moment she was clearly hoping for, she pulled away confused and frustrated. "You used to kiss me like you meant it," she said. "I used to kiss you like I needed it. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "When you need someone, you kiss them desperately. When you're just being polite, you kiss them appropriately." "So you're just being polite now?" "I'm being exactly as invested as you are. No more, no less." She didn't like that answer either, because she was starting to understand that she'd never been kissed politely before. She'd been kissed by someone who needed her, wanted her, couldn't get enough of her. And she'd called that pathetic. 3 months into my new approach, she was completely lost. The woman who had confidently declared my physical affection pathetic was now desperately trying to figure out how to make me want her the way I used to. She started working out more, buying new lingerie, doing her hair differently. She was trying to become more attractive without understanding that attraction had never been the issue. "Do I look good?" she'd ask, modeling a new outfit or a different hairstyle. "You look fine. Just fine. You've always been attractive." That was never the problem. Then what was the problem? The problem was that I was the only one who cared enough to do anything about how attractive I found you. She started reading articles about relationships online. She asked her friends for advice about how to be more affectionate. She even called her sister to complain about how different I'd become, though she was careful not to explain exactly what had caused the change. "Maybe he's just going through something," Megan suggested during one of their phone conversations that I couldn't help overhearing. "Men sometimes get weird about intimacy." "But he's not avoiding intimacy," Sarah replied, frustrated. "He's just not interested. Like, he'll participate if I start something, but he never starts anything himself anymore." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Didn't you always complain that he was too clingy?" Sarah was quiet for a long time after that. Because yes, she had complained about that. To her sister, to her friends, probably to her coworkers. She'd made my physical affection into a character flaw, a sign of neediness and desperation. And now that it was gone, she was learning what she'd actually lost. "I feel like you don't desire me anymore," she said one night after another failed attempt at seduction. "I don't desperately desire you anymore," I corrected. "I used to need your physical affection like I needed air. That was pathetic, remember? Now I'm fine with or without it. But I want you to need me. You can't have it both ways. Either my need was pathetic or it was valuable. You chose pathetic, so I eliminated the need." The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for. No more desperate physical attention. No more needy touching. No more pathetic displays of desire. And she absolutely hated it. For months in, she tried a different approach. She started being more physically aggressive, trying to force the passion she used to take for granted. She'd push me against walls and try to kiss me intensely. She'd grab my hands and put them on her body during intimate moments. She'd initiate sex with an intensity that felt more like desperation than desire. But here's what she couldn't recreate: the emotional connection that had driven my physical passion. When I used to kiss her desperately, it came from a place of genuine need and overwhelming affection. When she tried to recreate that desperation, it came from a place of panic about losing something she'd never valued. "This isn't working," she said after one particularly awkward encounter where she'd tried to be the passionate aggressor and I'd responded with mechanical participation. "What isn't working?" "This. Us. The way we are now. We're exactly what you asked for. No pathetic physical neediness." I didn't know what I was asking for. "Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were asking for. You wanted me to stop touching you like I needed to touch you. Mission accomplished." But you what? You thought I'd magically find a middle ground between desperate and indifferent? You thought I'd still want to touch you constantly, but somehow make it feel less needy?" She had no answer for that because there was no answer. She'd wanted me to want her less obviously, and now she was learning that less obvious want looked a lot like no want at all. 5 months after that night in the kitchen, she finally broke completely. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face. Not the manipulative tears from previous conversations, but the kind of deep, exhausted crying that comes from finally understanding something you've been avoiding. "I can't do this anymore," she said without looking up. "Do what? Live with someone who doesn't want me. I never said I didn't want you. You don't act like you want me. I don't act desperate for you. There's a difference." "I miss desperate," she whispered, and it was the most honest thing she'd said in months. "I miss feeling like you couldn't keep your hands off me. I miss feeling like you needed to kiss me. I miss feeling wanted. You felt suffocated by all that, remember? You felt like I was a pathetic teenager." I was wrong. About which part? The pathetic part or the teenager part? All of it. I was wrong about all of it. I sat down across from her, really looking at her for the first time in months. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd been carrying a weight she couldn't quite handle. "What exactly were you wrong about? I thought your touching me all the time meant you were needy and insecure. I didn't realize it meant you loved me. And now I realize the difference between someone who touches you because they need something from you and someone who touches you because they can't help themselves. Which one was I? You couldn't help yourself, and I made you feel pathetic for it." It was the first genuinely honest thing she'd said since this whole situation started. But honesty doesn't automatically fix broken dynamics, and I'd learned not to trust tears or confessions as indicators of real change. "So what do you want from me now?" I asked. "I want you to forgive me and go back to the way you were." The pathetic way, the loving way. They were the same thing, according to you. I know. I was wrong. I want pathetic back. I want desperate back. I want to feel like you can't resist me. But I can resist you now. That's what you taught me. That's what these 5 months have been about. Learning that I don't need your physical affection to feel whole. She sobbed harder, the kind of crying that comes from realizing you've lost something irreplaceable. "I don't know how to make you want me the way you used to." "You can't. Because the way I used to want you came from a place of believing you wanted me back. Now I know better. But I do want you back. You want the attention back. You want the validation back. You want to feel desired again. But you don't actually want me back. If you wanted me back, you'd have learned how to want me first. But I'm trying now. You're trying to get something back that you lost. That's not the same as trying to give something you've never given." 6 months after my transformation, she was a completely different person, but not in a good way. She'd started initiating physical contact constantly, but it felt forced and desperate. She'd try to recreate moments from our early relationship, but without the genuine emotion that had made those moments special. The truth was becoming clear to both of us. She'd never learned how to desire someone. She'd only learned how to be desired. And now that she wasn't being pursued with desperate intensity, she didn't know how to do the pursuing. "Teach me," she begged one night after yet another failed attempt at creating intimacy. "Teach me how to touch you the way you used to touch me." "You can't learn passion from instruction," I replied. "Either you feel it or you don't. I feel it now. You feel panic about losing something you took for granted. That's not the same as passion. How do you know the difference? When I used to kiss you, I wasn't thinking about what I might lose. I was thinking about how lucky I was to have something worth kissing." 7 months in, something finally shifted in her approach. Instead of trying to recreate our old dynamic or force passion she didn't naturally feel, she started trying to create something entirely new. She'd sit close to me during movies without trying to force cuddling. She'd take my hand during walks without squeezing for a response. She'd kiss me goodnight without expecting it to lead to more. For the first time since that night in the kitchen, her physical affection felt genuine rather than strategic. She wasn't trying to get something from me. She was trying to give something to me. "This feels different," I said after she'd kissed my cheek while I was reading. "Different how?" "Like you actually wanted to kiss me. Not like you wanted me to react to being kissed." "I didn't want to kiss you." "Why?" "Because you looked peaceful, and I wanted to be part of that peace." It was the first time she'd described physical affection in terms of what she wanted to give rather than what she hoped to receive. And for the first time in 7 months, I felt something stir in response to her touch. 8 months after my transformation, we had sex for the first time that felt like making love rather than negotiation. She didn't try to force passion or recreate our old intensity. She was just present with me, touching me because she wanted to touch me, not because she wanted to be touched back. Afterward, lying in bed, she said, "I understand now." Understand what? The difference between touching someone because you need validation and touching someone because you love them. Which one are you doing now? I'm trying to do the second one. How does it feel? Scary. Because I'm not in control of whether you respond the way I want you to. That's what vulnerability feels like. Is this how you felt for 2 years? Vulnerable every time you touched me? Yes. And I made you feel pathetic for being vulnerable. Yes. I'm sorry. It was the first apology she'd offered that felt genuine rather than strategic. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like reaching for her. So I did. I pulled her closer, kissed her forehead, and held her while she cried. Not tears of manipulation or frustration, but tears of genuine remorse for what she'd lost and what she'd put me through. 9 months later, we were in a completely different relationship. She'd learned how to initiate physical affection without desperation or manipulation. I'd learned how to receive it without immediately reciprocating out of habit. We were both more careful with each other's vulnerability, more intentional about our physical connection. Do you think we're going to make it? She asked one evening while we were cooking dinner together. I think we're going to be okay, I replied. But we're never going back to the way things were. I don't want to go back. I like this version of us better. Why? Because now when you touch me, I know you're choosing to. And when I touch you, I'm choosing to. Nothing's automatic anymore. How does that feel? Like we both matter. A year after that night when she called my kissing pathetic, I realized something important. The man who used to desperately need her physical affection was gone forever. In his place was someone who could appreciate it without requiring it. Someone who could give it without needing it returned immediately. Someone who understood the difference between love and desperation. And the woman who used to passively receive love had learned how to actively give it. She'd learned what it felt like to want someone enough to risk rejection. She'd learned what it felt like to be vulnerable in pursuit of connection. We were different people in a different relationship. And for the first time in 2 years, it felt like we were both choosing each other rather than one person choosing and the other person allowing it to happen. The pathetic, desperate husband who needed constant physical validation was dead. But the man who replaced him knew the difference between being wanted and being needed. And that man would never settle for being taken for granted again. Some nights, she'd reach for me first. Some nights, I'd reach for her first. But neither of us took that reaching for granted anymore. We'd both learned what it felt like to live without it. And we'd both learned that physical affection without mutual respect and effort was just performance. What we had now felt real in a way our old dynamic never had. The woman who once rolled her eyes at my kiss.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.